Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new Doctor Who video. And firstly, I'm sorry it's been ages. University life has kind of taken over for the last month or two really. I'm obviously in the final year of university doing dissertation stuff. And yeah, it just means that there's not a lot of time to make YouTube videos very often. So I'm sorry that there hasn't been many YouTube videos. I'm hoping that will pick up in the course of time. Certainly around Legends of the Sea Devils, there will be more videos, I promise. And certainly later in the year as well. In between that, I don't quite know at the moment. We're kind of just going to have to see how things go. But I am back with a brand new video today where I'm discussing what I think is quite an interesting topic. A topic that we don't necessarily know everything about so far, but I'm sure in the future we will learn more about it. And that is what might have been from the original plans for Series 13. So yes, of course, the series we got last year, Doctor Who Flux, was not what was originally planned for Series 13. It was essentially made out of necessity due to the COVID pandemic and the inability to be able to make Doctor Who in quite the same way with less opportunity for location filming and things like that. And also just the benefits of being able to use the same cast over multiple episodes sort of outweighed, all the problems that there were going to be in terms of having so many different actors for different episodes and things. And so, we got a very, very different series to what was originally being planned back in late 2019, early 2020. Because, of course, Series 12 was wrapped, and Revolution of the Daleks, which although it aired on January 1st, 2021, in the midst of the pandemic, it was actually shot in October 2019. And so sort of from that point, that sort of whole series and special was all wrapped up. And so from late 2019 into early 2020, Series 13 was beginning to be planned. And at the time, COVID wasn't a thing. We didn't think it was going to have a big impact. And so it was, just planning another new series of Doctor Who. And there's been a few interesting little tidbits over time as to what that might have looked like and what might have been involved in it. So the first thing of note was that ages ago, I think it was around that sort of time or soon after Series 12 aired in early 2020, it came out on one of those CV websites for, writers and producers and whatever. It said that the writer Edheim had been credited with an episode for Series 13. Now, Edheim, of course, was the writer for It Takes You Away and Orphan 55. Two quite differing in quality episodes, but there we are. And yes, he was the brains behind those two, and it looked like at this point that he was going to be penning an episode for Series 13. Now, there was no indication of what the story would have been like in any way, but it seems like he clearly was at the time down to write for it, and I'm sure there were, although we don't know about it, there were several other writers that presumably had scripts available or written scripts for it, and that, it was into a planning stage with the series that was all then dropped when obviously Chris went and wrote every single episode except for Village of the Angels, which was co-written with Maxine Alderton. Now, speaking of Maxine Alderton, it was also rumoured in the early stages of Series 13 production, again around that sort of early to mid-2020 time, that Maxine Alderton was going to be a sort of joint head writer with Chris Chibnall, that she was going to in some way be involved in the much wider structure of the whole series and writing of the whole series rather than just an individual episode like we saw with The Haunting of Villa Diodati in Series 12. So, it might have really given a quite different feel to the series if you'd had another writer alongside Chris really involved in the fundamental story of the series, lots of the individual script, and just having that additional involvement in the series that just hasn't been there previously for Chris Chibnall. I think that really could have given us quite a different version of Doctor, not necessarily a completely different version of Doctor Who, because it would have still ultimately been Chris's vision, but I just feel like it could have added something really different and new to it, particularly when we've seen how well written the story she has done have been, like Haunting of Villa Diodati and Village of the Angels. In terms of what the structure of the series would have looked like, I think it's very hard. We don't know for a fact what the plan was. You'd have to assume, given that Series 11 and Series 12 were the same in terms of having 10 episodes and then a special, I think it's quite likely that was the, at least, approach they were planning to take with Series 13. Whether that was ultimately what they would have settled down on, I don't know, but I think that's where we probably would have seen it. I kind of imagine that Series 13 would have had a much the similar structure to Series 12, really, with a 10-episode series, some two-parters in there, the sort of Division and Timeless Child storyline still being a part of the series and still running through it, but in much more the way that we saw in Series 12, where it was a big part of some episodes and then not really a part of all of other episodes. I sort of feel like that would have been the approach that would have been taken. Whether something like The Flux as an idea would have actually been in Series 13, I don't know. I think it's definitely possible. That could have been the big sort of oncoming thing for the series, or you could have incorporated that in the first episode and still had some standalone adventures sort of dropped into there. But I kind of sense that given that they sort of said let's drop what we had for Series 13 and go for the serialized story of a 6-episode story in the sort of vein of the classic series, I kind of feel like something like The Flux was invented sort of as part of that concept, because it very much felt integrated into the series, where some things felt slightly less so. So in terms of any other things we know about the series, it seems like Captain Jack had some sort of involvement in Series 13 as well, because in the recently released script for Revolution of the Daleks, it has a stage direction at the very, very end of the episode when Ryan and Graham have left the TARDIS and it's just the Doctor and Yaz left in there, that suddenly Captain Jack comes barreling back into the TARDIS at the very end of this episode. It certainly assumes this was shot, because obviously they shot it in October 2019. So as far as you know, that probably exists as a deleted scene, and the original intention was for Captain Jack to return in some way. But by the time we got towards the airing of Revolution of the Daleks in the beginning of 2021, it was obviously clear to them that, Doctor Who Flux was what was going to be happening and not the original Series 13, and that maybe Captain Jack didn't actually fit into the plans they had for Series 13, for the new Series 13 in Doctor Who Flux, compared to what they'd originally planned for the original Series 13. There was a magazine, I think a comic or something, that was in early 2021 as well, which suggested that it was a Captain Jack comic, and it was going to be tying into the second episode of New Series 13 that was to do with time windows. So it seemed like there was a time where Captain Jack was going to be a big part of the series. Now, the key thing I think is worth mentioning here is that the fact that he didn't appear in Doctor Who Flux, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I'm aware, is not to do with everything that came out about him last year and him getting cancelled, or whatever you want us to call it. That sort of everything that happened with that happened well into production for Doctor Who Flux. I think it was around sort of March or April of last year when that came out, and they were virtually filming the finale by that point. So the stuff that came out had no effect on him being a part of Doctor Who Series 13, Doctor Who Flux. It was simply the fact that when we changed from what was originally planned to the new version, for whatever reason, he wasn't a part of it and wasn't able to be fitted into it. Now, maybe it's the case that he was meant to be in, say, Legend of the Sea Devils or the Centenary Special, but it's very unlikely he will be now, because those were shot after everything that came out about John Barrowman. And so, I'm sure he wouldn't have been invited back to do Doctor Who R straight after that, given they've seemed to be distancing themselves from him. So with those couple of episodes, and even the Daleks, to be fair, if it whatever was an original plan for him to be in any of those episodes, then he would have been removed. But in terms of Doctor Who Flux as a series, he was never meant to be a part of it. So is there anything else we know about what Series 13 might have looked like in the past? Well, we don't. There's not huge amounts more. I think we can probably say, if we look at what we ultimately ended up with Doctor Who Flux, that the sort of most standalone episodes, the War of the Centaurans and Village of the Angels, I feel like those were both originally going to be a part of Series 13 as it was originally planned. I mean, Chris Chibnall has long talked about how he always wanted to do a Centauran story, and that was a big thing for him. So I think we always would have seen Centaurans in Series 13, probably in the War of Centaurans type episode. Whether they would have then become a part of the finale as well, I'm less sure. I don't think we can really have any idea of how Chris originally planned any of that to play out, but I certainly imagine there would have been a Centauran story in there. And I think there was also a desire to bring back the Weeping Angels as well, so I think it would have made sense that a story somewhat along the lines of Village of the Angels, presumably that's sort of the story that Maxine Alderton originally pitched, and then was going to be a more standard script probably for Series 13, and then was adapted to be able to be a part of Doctor Who Flux. I think we probably would have seen both of those episodes in some form play into Series 13, but when you look at, say, the Halloween Apocalypse or Once Upon a Time, Survivors of the Flux and The Vanquishers, I all feel like those are pretty much scripts that would have been written purely for Doctor Who Flux. I just don't really see, apart from some of the division stuff in there, maybe, meeting who the Tecteun in episode 5 and all of that. I can imagine that being in the first part of a finale for Series 13. I think that could have been the case, but the rest of it I just think was probably all created for Doctor Who Flux. So yeah, there's probably a treasure trove out there of the lost stories, as Big Finish likes to call them, stories that never got made. We had the old Lost Season 23 from back in the classic series, when there was a whole host of scripts that never got made. I imagine there's some scripts out there that got pretty far through, several drafts and, heading towards a final stage, and then would just have to be dropped. And I'd be absolutely fascinated to read them, to hear about them. And so I do hope that at some point down the line, whether we have to wait, 20 blooming years or something, that we do, get an opportunity to see what was originally planned there. Because I'm sure there were lots of great and interesting creative ideas involved in it. And just to see and imagine what the original structure of Series 13 was going to look like, how the story arc and narrative was going to play out, I think is fascinating. And that's, you know, it's why I did this video, and I just love to learn more about it if we ever get the opportunity to do so. But yeah, that I think is just about it for this video, guys. Do let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on what I know of the suggesting of the original Series 13. Are you happy that we got Doctor Who Flux in the end, or would you have preferred to see a more standard series in the format that we saw in Series 12 for Series 13? Would you like to see the return of Captain Jack or not? Or, you know, would you have liked to have seen a Centauran story as part of the original Series 13? Just let me know your thoughts on what you would like to have seen down in the comments below. But that is just about it from this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like button, that subscribe button, and I'll see you again, hopefully quite soon, for a brand new video. But until then, it is goodbye.